Well, hello. Let me start with this. I used to be an anxious workaholic. Many of us can relate to the feeling of being absolutely exhausted by work, living from one burnout to another while constantly doubting our own abilities. If you can relate to that, be my guest. Hello, I'm Lena. I used to be all of those things. And now I'm gonna tell you how to work your work without losing your sanity along the way. I am 32, which makes me a millennial. And if you're around 27 to maybe 40, there is a high chance that you can relate to what I'm about to tell you. I work in corporate for 14 years. I have degrees, MBA, career, I work in different companies, industries, in different functions within the companies, even in different countries. I burned out, like properly burned out, a few times. I almost went absolutely crazy because of my work a few times, but it was all in the past. And all these problems were consequences of how I approached my work. And if you went through something similar, there is a high chance that this is because of how we've been taught to approach our work. Let me tell you how it starts. We enter the corporate, we start our first job. We are fresh, we're green, we are excited. We generally want to do our job well, and we're not afraid of hard work. We don't necessarily believe much in what we do, but I mean, it's a job. Maybe you're not supposed to enjoy that much. It's not supposed to be something that, resonates with you that deeply. Everyone is going to work on Monday morning, so you should go too. Also, when we start working, we join a new environment, a new social circle. We observe how people behave and we adapt. Because, working environment is a brave new world to us. We don't know rules of the game. We don't understand how everything is happening there. So what we do? We look around and we adapt. And we work. We work a lot, we're putting our best efforts because we're, action-oriented people. We want to make an impact, we want to make a difference. Even if we don't believe much in what we're doing, we just want to do good. The longer we work, we see how people start depend on us. They depend on the result of our work. It's a nice feeling, it gives you a certain satisfaction. So we're inspired to work more. Then at some point you're getting a promotion, then you work more, then maybe you're getting another promotion. As it usually happens, your area of responsibilities is getting a little bit bigger, one small step at a time. And of course you're taking it because first of all, you can do it. And second of all, people depend on you. You want to do good. And then at some point of this whole timeline, you start feeling that it's getting a little bit too much. You start feeling overwhelmed. But you cannot stop it anymore. Because guess what? People depend on you. You already committed. You're that one person that cannot be replaced. So you may be thinking, okay, all right, I can work a few extra hours this week just to finish this one thing that's supposed to be done. And then you're burned out. No one knows how it happened. Magic. And depending on how deep you went into this rabbit hole, there may be a few scenarios. Scenario number one, you don't feel inspired anymore. You feel like nothing interests you much. You're like working on autopilot. You're not excited about anything. It feels like you're emotionally numb when it comes to work. Or for example, scenario two, you went nuts, you had a mental breakdown, you decided to quit your job impulsively because it was just too much. You couldn't take it anymore and you weren't sure what to do afterwards. In both of these cases, you're kind of not in the best place in your life, but so many of us are there. We continue working despite us being severely burned out. Because let's face it, quite often we don't have a choice. We don't have an option to quit the job. And we continue doing that while hating everything and everyone around us. So my dear friends, let's summarize. We want to work. We want to work well, but we're burned out, we're exhausted, and we don't know how to do it sustainably? Well, I hope I painted the picture well for you, and now let's talk about what are the things that we do that lead us to this fascinating state of our life. First of all, burnout is the result of a stress. It means that if we work in a high-pressure environment where we experience stress often, it leads to a burnout. There is actually a perception of certain companies or certain industries that are more stressful than others. For example, consulting is usually perceived as a high stressful job. People work extra hours there a lot and rarely have a healthy work-life balance. But honestly speaking, I mean, it's really easy to go from here to, oh, you don't work in the consulting, it means that you don't have a stressful job. In almost any company and any industry, there are certain jobs where the pressure on you is just higher. The environment around you is more stressful. And it doesn't directly depend on if you're a manager or not, or in what industry or function you work. So the first factor is stress. The second one is high workloads without a time for a proper rest and relaxation. Your job may not be necessarily stressful, but there may be just a lot of it. And if you're doing this for a long time without taking time to properly rest, it can also contribute to a burnout. The next factor, and we're going into a little bit less obvious sides, is, I would call it, a lack of autonomy at work. Hear me out. If you have a job with a zero autonomy at work, which means that you don't get to choose neither what you do nor how you do it, it is actually mentally exhausting when you're just hands that execute what has been told to you. And even more than that, if you constantly have to execute a ridiculous or absurd tasks from your management, it actually impacts you. You can really get emotionally exhausted if you work in this environment for a long time. Another factor, also maybe not obvious one, is a lack of social support. If you do a job and you don't feel like anyone supports you at work, you're all alone with your problems. No one gives you a hand when you're going through a tough time. No one even, trying to cheer you up. That's actually quite an intense environment to work in. Because sometimes you don't have anyone who could actually help you, but if you have this social support, people acknowledge that you're doing something important and good. They acknowledge that you're actually doing hard work and you're going through a hard time work-wise sometimes. Without all of that, you feel much more alone in your problems. When you're not feeling supported at work, it is a factor that contributes to a burnout. And the last factor is basically when you're not aligned with your company's values. I mean, I understand there are many people who maybe not necessarily view this as a problem, but first of all, many of us do. And second of all, this factor in combination with previous ones can make your burnout worse, right? When you're working hard to do something that you genuinely believe in, you work in a company that is doing something good, something that you personally resonate with, honestly, we can live much longer in a situation of a stress or increased workload without, But if the company is doing something that you don't really care, the level of resilience is getting lower. So this is what's happening with us at work that can lead to us burning out. And you know what? The problem is we rarely see at work a proper role models, or we rarely work in a culture that would actually show us how it is possible to do a good work without going nuts. Because when we work in a corporate, when we look at the people around us, when we look at the managers and directors, it kind of feels like, they're having it all, that everything is under control, they're not burned out, they're stable, everything is fine. And it makes us think that it's us who don't have something in us. It's us who are broken because we cannot work hard and keep it sustainable. And these factors, quite often they're a little bit outside of our control. So it's not that we can just stop getting stressed at work. But you have to understand that it's possible to have a reasonable work-life balance and survive all this. Even more than that, you can work great without sacrificing your sanity and mental health. And I'm not suggesting you a downshifting or just take it easy approach or escapism or anything like that. Because I don't know about you, but I still need my job and I still want to do my job well. I have my career. I want to develop it further. So we also should be realistic about how we approach it. I think I can talk for hours about how to achieve this state in your work life. But today I want to give you a few, I would say, the most crucial things, tips, actions that I wish someone would tell me when I just started my work in corporate. The tip number one would be respect your boundaries. No, wait. It's not just about, how to say no at work. Let me explain. When you work in a corporate, they're often really good at creating a sense of urgency in you. Basically, they make you feel that you have to do something and this is really important, even when it's not. Everything is organized the way for everyone to feel that if you won't do a certain thing, everything else will fall apart. I mean, to a certain extent, it's true. There are people who depend on your result, on something that you create or provide. Does it necessarily mean that if you won't do it or if it will be delayed for one day, everything else will fall apart? No. But because we're responsible people, we want to do our job well, it all creates this internal baseline for us. And quite often we don't even need a manager or someone who would tell us, don't forget to do this. We remember. And often it pushes us to overwork. It pushes us to stress out much more than it's proportionally reasonable. I used to work in IT in a function where this sense of urgency was like, phew. I was constantly feeling that if I won't do this and that, I will let someone else down. What I did not understand back then is that this approach is not sustainable. And it only seemed like I can work this extra hours for a day or two or week or two because I didn't notice how it actually came into practice, how it became usual for me to overwork. And only after my first burnout, I started to treat the time limits for my work as something given, as something that I cannot do anything about. If I have to finish my work now, I finish it now. I switched my mindset from, I can work a little bit longer to finish this another thing that should be done, to my time is up for work today and this is it. There is no alternative because I know that this is a slippery slope. Often the nature of the job is that we're having one more task and something else to do. So at some point I realized that it would never end. So I treat the number of hours that I work as the number of hours in the day. I would maybe benefit from having more hours in a day, who wouldn't? But there is nothing I can do about it. And I approach my working hours with the same attitude. When I work hard, I work efficient, but I don't work for 12 plus hours a day. Second tip, we're often recommended when we're dealing with burnout to take a time off, to relax, to rest. This is absolutely valid. But what I often notice is that sometimes we occupy this time that we allocated for the rest with other things that we need to do in our life. I remember one time I came back to work on Monday morning and as usual I feel absolutely exhausted. I didn't feel that I rested at all. It feels like there was no weekend. And I tried to analyze why things like that are happening. And I took a look at how my weekend looks like and there were almost no resting time there. I cleaned the apartment, I did my laundry, I did my groceries, I visited a friend, I did some paperwork. So basically all my weekend was occupied with something I had to do or I promised someone to do. And none of it felt as a rest to me personally. And this is a trick because when we don't work by default, we tend to think for some reason that this is a resting time. No, it's not. And first of all, it actually demands from you to understand what recharges you, what is your resting time. Because for some people, meeting a friend is a recharging time. It's how they rest. For some of them, it's an additional stress and they even need to recover after that. They will need alone time after they had social interactions with someone. So you need to know yourself and know what is this relaxed time actually mean for you. And in the end, don't try to trick yourself, convincing yourself that you had weekends, you had the rest time, now you should be, happy and energized. Please look more objectively at how you actually spend your free time. The third tip for you would be to add small pauses, moments of relaxation and joy within your working day. Almost all of us have an opportunity to take a small pause during the working day. And it's really important because if you don't allow yourself to rest at least a little bit during the working day, you will be absolutely exhausted in the end. And even if you prepared something relaxing for you after work, you will still feel much worse compared to a day that you filled in with the small moments of joy and quiet time. Again, almost all of us have a chance to have these moments. The difference is what we usually do is when we have a pause, we scroll the phone or read the news or doing something else that I would not really consider as a resting time. When you have 5 or 10 minutes between your meetings, make yourself tea, take a small walk, listen to something. Don't look at your phone. Your eyes are already tired even without it. Think about what works for you. Use these moments of the day intentionally. And the last one would be, know what kind of self-care works for you personally. I kind of already touched upon this, but I will give you an example. It took some time for me to understand that how I spend my morning heavily defines how I spend my day. If I don't allocate enough time for me to have a slow breakfast, to take care of myself, to do my own, rituals of self-care, I don't feel well, I don't feel energized, I don't feel my best during this day. So what I did is I analyzed my morning routine, I identified the things that are important for me personally. For me, it's usually to walk with the dog in the morning, to have a small breakfast, to take a shower, to do some makeup. And actually, I even did it when it was lockdown. So I was doing my makeup every single morning just because I knew that it works for me. It helps me to set the mood for the day. For you, it can be something different. It can be an evening routine. It can be something that you do outside your work. You have to have moments of self-care in your life because this is when you allow yourself to slow down a little bit. Let the stress that we unavoidably have at work, you allow to let go a little bit. In my humble opinion, all these things are like a working hygiene because most probably we will all be working for many years. And the sooner we learn how to do this without sacrificing our mental health, the better. I hope it was helpful. And as usual, if you had some value from this video, give me something in return. Write a comment. Let's chat in the comment section. See you there.